All right, welcome. So glad you're here. So if you're here, it's because when you took the quiz, and I identified that there's some movement and motor control issues that you're working with right now. And this class is a little bit interesting because these are kind of like two sides of the same coin. Either you're having too much movement or too little movement. And so in this class, we're going to discuss both. So it's more than likely that really only one of these is going to apply to you, that you either have too much or too little. So just be selective about the interventions that you decide to do and make sure that they're congruent with what you have going on. So the objectives here are to understand the brain's go and no go or stop systems. Um, we're going to also learn a little bit about the inner ear. We're going to expand upon some of the earlier recommendations in regards to food and lifestyle that are specific to the systems that we're trying to address here. We're going to give you some simple guidelines and ideas of things to do to enhance this part of your brain. And then hopefully by the end of this, you'll have kind of an idea of a program that you can put together and start to implement in order to help your brain heal. So let's talk about this part of the brain called the basal ganglia. So the basal ganglia is referred to as kind of a control center. I look at it as kind of a gating system for movement within the brain. And so basically what this does is it gates movement. So it tells your body when to go, when to actually move, and when to not go, when to suppress that movement. And so these movements, when this part of the brain, when the basal ganglia and the certain pathways in this part of the brain are not working correctly, then you can either have hypokinetic, where you move less than you should, so really slow movements, the shuffling gait, slow speech, um, slow walking patterns. Or there's a problem with the gas pedal, or you can have this more hyperkinetic movement system where you have excessive movement. This could be like tics or with kind of obsessive compulsive or restless leg, or even more severe hyper movement strategy. So this is when there's a problem with the brake system of the basal ganglia part of the brain. So, if you took the quiz and you got into this class, it's likely you have one or the other of these. So here's some of the things that you may be experiencing. Your handwriting might be getting smaller. That's micrographia, or it's really hard to write because you're moving so slow. There's reduced arm swing when walking. There's a slight tremor at rest, the resting pill tremor. It's the most common one. There might be a reduced voice volume as well. And it just should be mentioned that once you start to have these movement dysfunctions, this is a later stage of brain degeneration. So by the time you get to this point, there's less that you can do than if these would have been identified sooner. So for the hypokinetic stuff, usually the first warning signs are constipation or difficulty smelling. There's usually warning signs way earlier on that you're trending in this particular direction. So by the time that this stuff shows up, it's much harder to work with. So, hyperkinetic issues are nervousness or panic, tics, sudden movements or vocalizations, restless legs syndrome, difficulty sitting still. All of these can be part of the movement dysfunctions. So, let's go a little bit deeper into these brain chemicals and what how we can best support them. So in terms of the gas pedal, this go system, so the one of the primary neurotransmitters that is affected is dopamine, and dopamine is produced in the substantia nigra, and it's produced from different building blocks that we can increase in our consumption of in order to best support the production of dopamine so that this go system is working properly. So, one of these is an amino acid called tyrosine that's in protein. And then there's a lot of little cofactors and vitamins and minerals that help convert that tyrosine into dopamine. And so these are folate, vitamin C, vitamin B6. All of these play a role in that conversion. And then when we're talking about the brake pedal, when we're talking about the stop system or the no-go system, the primary neurotransmitter that we want to enhance is the neurotransmitter GABA. And so GABA starts with the building block glutamate. And then that glutamate requires the GAD enzyme to convert it into GABA. And so we want to we want to promote the production of GABA through different cofactors like vitamin B6 and magnesium. So, both of these pathways depend on certain cofactors to convert the building blocks into the actual neurotransmitter. So here's a little bit more information about that. This is really nothing new. That was pretty much described on the previous slide. So this is just more information about these critical cofactors that are needed in order to synthesize both GABA and dopamine. So let's talk a little bit about neuroinflammation. So neuroinflammation or chronic neuroinflammation is when the brain's immune cells, the microglia, when they're not able to shut off an inflammatory response, and that inflammation starts to damage the brain cells. And so the substantia nigra, which is the part of the basal ganglia where the dopamine is being produced, is especially susceptible to this. And then the inflammation can also inhibit the neurotransmitter network that's associated with GABA and make it hard for the body to put on the brakes. Also, if there's a lot of neuroinflammation, it can promote misfolding of proteins like alpha-synuclein, which is the protein implicated in Parkinsonism. So we want to make sure that we have as little inflammation as possible. So that means reducing or eliminating our consumption of processed foods, sugar, especially processed sugar. That means supporting our gut and doing whatever we need to do to get rid of a leaky gut or to get rid of bacterial overgrowth where it doesn't belong, like in the small intestine, to reduce our exposure to different environmental toxins like pesticides and herbicides, to reduce our stress levels. And so we can really stop this inflammatory cycle that kind of self-perpetuates itself. So now we're going to talk about some supplementation that you can utilize in order to support each of these systems. So if you're needing more dopamine support, a natural precursor to dopamine is L-DOPA, and this is found naturally in a plant. Um, and the Latin name of that plant is Mucuna pruriens. So if you can, it's helpful to find a standardized form of this. So where it has a certain percentage of L-DOPA, if you can, that's the best way. But if not, you can just find the Mucuna pruriens and start taking that to support this dopamine pathway. And then N-acetyl L-tyrosine is a tyrosine precursor. And so you can also supplement with that in order to increase the amount of tyrosine, and hopefully that tyrosine gets converted into dopamine. In terms of GABA support, is supported by magnesium and specifically magnesium glycinate. That's one of the many different forms of magnesium. And so that can support the GABA system. And then also L-theanine, which is found in green tea, and taurine. These are found in energy drinks, but they do both support the GABA system. Just don't take them too late in the day. And there's you can actually get GABA itself from different supplement companies by itself. And it's not meant to pass the blood-brain barrier. So there's this thing called the GABA challenge test that you can do, where if you take a GABA supplement and you start to feel tired afterwards, that's usually an indication that there's a compromise in the blood-brain barrier, because the GABA should not be able to cross the blood-brain barrier. It's too large of a molecule for that. So you can also take some antioxidants that are neuroprotective. These are good for both hyper and hypokinetic. There's N-acetylcysteine. So N-acetylcysteine is a precursor to glutathione. Glutathione is the most powerful antioxidant we have that we produce naturally, but sometimes you need a higher amount of it. You can also take alpha lipoic acid and omega-3s. Those also have an antioxidant effect on the body. And then some antioxidants that are commonly found in food are apigenin, luteolin, and bacillin. All of these are common antioxidants and sometimes are incorporated into different supplements to help fight inflammation. So anytime we're talking about the brain, we're also talking about the gut. And since this class is primarily focused on the dopamine and GABA systems, there are gut bacteria that help synthesize dopamine and GABA. So we have Lactobacillus plantarum and Enterococcus faecium, and then Lactobacillus brevis and Bifidobacterium dentium. And so those gut bacteria are beneficial gut bacteria that are going to help us produce these important neurotransmitters. So as you're, starting to implement a protocol for healing your gut with the long-term goal of healing your brain, it can be helpful to initially reduce any sort of foods, processed foods, highly inflammatory foods like sugar that you're eating, and reduce your intake of conventional produce and conventional meat, since they are full of pesticides and herbicides and hormones and other stuff like that. And then you can start to repair the gut lining with bone broth or a supplement called L-glutamine that helps with leaky gut. And then starting to add in, supplementing with prebiotics and probiotics to help rebuild that microbiome. Um, like I said earlier, with the dopamine system, the first sign is actually constipation. And so this shows up in the gut long before it shows up in the brain. So let's talk more about a dopamine deficiency. So, as this dopamine deficiency progresses, your movements will get slower. It takes your voice will get softer. You might get those Parkinson's-like symptoms of the pill rolling tremor. You get the small handwriting, the reduced arm swing. And so, the supplements are the mecunopurians and the tyrosine to give you those precursors you need to support that dopamine system. And then in terms of movement rehabilitation, exercise is extremely helpful for the dopamine system. So large amplitude training, as things start to decrease in a safe environment, you start to exaggerate that. So exaggerated arm swings, big deliberate movements, exaggerated leg movements, projecting your voice, um, and then working with coordination and balance. So piano playing or just quick movement of the fingers, dual tasking, walking like while talking, or one of my favorites is walking while counting backwards by 7 from 100 down to 1. That's getting your brain involved and your movement system simultaneously. It's very challenging. Um, so these are all kind of things that you can do to help. And then there's some movement rehabilitation for the hyperkinetic as well. That can be done. Um, and then there's the targeted support. So I feel like we've kind of covered this ad nauseum in terms of the different supplements that are needed here. And then remember from our earlier course that brain-derived neurotropic factor helps neurons grow and is supported by exercise. And so exercise is going to support the production of these neurotransmitters that we're wanting to produce, and reducing stress is also going to help with that. So if you're, doing high intensity exercise or cardiovascular exercise where you're in zone 2 or 3, that's really good for hypokinetic. And then hyperkinetic does better with balance and gentle controlled movements like yoga and tai chi. And then, as we've covered before, sleep is extremely important for the brain. So ensure that you're getting adequate sleep here for both of these. So consistent bedtimes and wake times, a dark, quiet, cool room, no screens before bed, and then, some of these supplements to help the GABA system, because GABA also will help you sleep. Reduce your toxin exposure. So filter your water, eat fresh, organic, or pasture-raised food, and ensure that you're not subject to more toxins than you need to be, because it's kind of inevitable that you're going to get some exposure. So here's a program to help with detoxification. So adequate hydration, taking these supplements to help the master antioxidant glutathione function. And then you can also use different supplements like chlorella or put cilantro in your food, or do infrared sauna therapy. All of those will help you detoxify. So remember that this is a general class and not a personalized plan. And so you're going to have to develop your own plan based on this information. So first, you're classifying your movement pattern, whether it's hypo or hyperkinetic. And then you're looking for any root causes that you're aware of: inflammation, deficiency, stress. And then you're putting together a plan based on what you're experiencing to, get better results. So here's an example of a plan. Phase 1, anti-inflammatory diet, improved sleep, better stress management, taking the supplements for either the dopamine or GABA system, and then starting to do more targeted support in gut healing, and then tracking your symptoms and movement quality, energy, and focus. So remember that this program is really a lifelong program for supporting your brain, and most of these suggestions are good for everybody. It's a general class. Um, and then you might have to change things as you go. So what worked for you last year may not work for you this year. And then it's also helpful to connect with others and just keep learning and, just staying positive. So thanks so much for watching this class. This one's a little bit strange because, it's two sides of the extreme here, but we just grouped them together because they're both classified as movement and motor control issues. And so I really hope that you got a lot out of this and learned some new information that was really helpful. And thanks for watching.